guys online. We are talking today. It's really weird. Easy, can you make sure it's on for me up there? Okay. Had the craziest thing happen this morning. My cat jumped on my Bible and tore it. At least it was only the book of Ezekiel. Just kidding. It was the book of Ezekiel, so I can tape it though. No, but it was funny because I was like, oh, okay. Whew. It wasn't. Oh, I love good tape, good. Okay. We're going to talk today about the wise men a little bit. It's actually more, but I started praying for what we were going to do this season, and I felt like this Sunday was the Sunday to do the wise men, because it's after Christmas, but also the wise men were in search of something beyond themselves, and it was a great cost for them to go. It wasn't an easy trek. It wasn't simple. They didn't exactly know what they would find, but they went. Okay? Start out here. Matthew 2. Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. About that time, some wise men from the east lands arrived in Jerusalem asking, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him." King Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, as was everyone in Jerusalem. All right, the wise men. Now, here's what I don't want to do. I do not want to pop your bubble of Christmas, okay? I really hate it when people do that. No, the wise men were not there the day that Jesus was born, like it shows in the cartoons. But that does not mean that you have to take your manger scene and put Jesus on one side of the room and the wise men on the other, okay? It's not like sacrilegious to have your wise men in your manger scene. It's okay. But I've seen people, they go, "Oh my goodness, I thought it was this way. That means I have to change everything I've ever done." Okay, that's religion. It's okay. You can have your wise men in your manger scene. I like them there. It reminds us. But it's not, the things that I'm going to tell you today are not things to pop your bubble. Okay, they were called Magi, or wise men. The name was given by the Babylonians, the Medians, the Persians, and others. This was not a Hebrew thing. This was not a Jewish thing. This was something from the East. Wise men were either teachers, astrologers, seers, interpreter of dreams, soothsayers, sorcerers, or magicians. These were not what we would call Christians, okay? Jews. They were not people who believed in the God of Israel necessarily. This word didn't mean that. They brought 3 gifts, not necessarily 3 people. We just have 3 people because there's 3 gifts. We know there was more than one because it's plural. But we don't know how many there were. There probably was a pretty good caravan. If you think about it, if these guys were rich, they weren't traveling alone. It does not say they were kings, like we sing, "We 3 kings." It does not say they were kings, but they would have been officials or noble people or people that were important. They came from the east, and they came sometime after Jesus' birth, not the night of. They saw his star, so they understood how to read the stars. Now, there's lots of speculation about the star thing, and there's some pretty good documentaries. I can't remember, like Blue Global. How do you say his name? Giglio, that guy. Giglio, if you ever look him up, or ask Ben, he will tell you there's some amazing documentation of the stars and things like that. Whether it was a constellation that they saw or a magical, all of a sudden, boom, God created a star and it was there, I have no clue because I wasn't there. And the Bible doesn't say exactly that. Some people say, well, it was a constellation. They said we saw his star rise in the east. And that makes sense, except for when you get to the part where it says, and they followed the star as it moved. It says, and it stopped above the mother and his child. Wait. How did it stop there? Okay, so it's not something that we can contain in our perfect little box. Isn't that amazing? That's so cool. When we can't contain it, that means we just have to trust God for it. Okay, wise men. Where in the world did they come from? The East. Now, how did someone in the East find out about Hebrew prophecy? We don't know exactly, but there is a connection potentially. Let's step back in time over 500 years to Daniel. Do you guys remember Daniel? Daniel in the lion's den? Daniel. And if you heard this song in your head right now, you were raised in a generation of VeggieTales, and you can hear the song in your head, oh no, what we gonna do? King likes Daniel more than me and you. I'm trying to study for this, and I can only hear this song repeating in my head as I'm reading my Bible, and I see the guys doing this, right? So that's what happens when I read Daniel. All right, this is what it says about Daniel. So the history of it, they were captured. Israel was taken over, and then it says that they selected only the strong and healthy and select only strong, healthy, and good-looking young men, he said. Make sure that they are well-versed in every branch of learning, are gifted in the knowledge and good judgment, and are suitable to serve in the royal palace. Train these men in the language and literature of Babylon. The king assigned them the king assigned them a daily ration of food and wine from his table, and they were to be trained for 3 years, and then they would enter the royal service. Okay, who were these guys? There was 4 selected: Daniel, Hananiah, I can't say that one, Mishael, and Azariah. And their names were changed to Belshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Those were the names they were changed to. Now, I looked up because I just was interested. Belshazzar means protector of the king. And I thought that was kind of interesting because as Daniel is brought in, that is his job, he's there. But if you look at who Daniel was, he loved the Lord and he was a protector of the king. That's what he did. Now, these are some of the things that we know about these guys. They were from royal families. Daniel 1:3 says that they were from royal or noble families. These guys were between 13 and 18, and they're most likely made into eunuchs. That means they were castrated. They were no longer able to have kids. We romanticize the Bible. We want to make it like, oh, it's so amazing. Like Daniel, and they were captured, and they were serving the Lord. And it's like, no, these were like teenage boys brought into captivity. Their lives were altered forever. Whatever they thought they were going to be was taken completely away. And they were trained in a demonic culture. The Babylonian culture was demonic. They worshiped gods that were not God. That changes it, doesn't it? Like you go, wait a minute, this is not a very pretty story. Here's these God-fearing guys, and they're brought into this culture that is dark. And what does Daniel do? And let me read this first. And God gave these 4 young men an unusual altitude for understanding every aspect of literature and wisdom. And God gave Daniel this special ability to interpret the meanings of visions and dreams. I think I missed putting a verse in. Okay, let me just talk about it first. So it says there that Daniel had set his heart to not defile himself. I must have that later. I'm sorry. It is later. Let me just read this then. Sorry. When training period was ordered by the king was complete, the chief of staff brought all the young men to King Nebuchadnezzar. That's a fun one. The king talked with them, and no one impressed him as much as Daniel, Hananiah, Azariah. So they entered the royal service. Whenever the king consulted them in any matter requiring wisdom and balanced judgment, he found them 10 times more capable than any magician and enchanters in his entire kingdom. There is a man in your kingdom. Okay, this is a different part. All right. So it says that Daniel set his heart not to be defiled. When it said that they gave him food, Daniel was like, this is not food we eat. This is not food that Jewish people eat. We don't drink their wine. We don't eat their food. And so he goes to his overseer and he says, can we please just eat vegetables? That's what it says. And the guy's like, you're going to look scrawny and I'm going to get in trouble. And he's like, give me 1 week. Basically saying, give God 1 week. And so he sets out, and by the end of the time frame, they're stronger and they're healthier, and they were able to live in their way, in their honoring God way, in a demonic culture, in a culture that would have encouraged excessive drinking and anything else. They would be given the finest food, and they decided, no, I'm going to stick with what God has given me. Daniel did not make that decision that day. That is something that started way before. You don't make these critical decisions in the moment. They are investments over a time frame of your life. When you're in crisis, what do? You react out of what you know. So Daniel had years before set his heart before the Lord. You can see it in his decisions and every way he makes throughout the book of Daniel, that his heart was set on the Lord as a young man. The investment, the time was there. And so when we think about, man, what am I going to do when I face crisis? Be like Daniel. Before the crisis happens, set your heart to be committed to the Lord, to walk with the Lord. Now, here it talks about Daniel. There is a man in your kingdom who has within him the spirit of the holy gods. During Nebuchadnezzar's reign, this man was found to have insight, understanding, and wisdom like that of the gods. So Daniel was highlighted for a purpose. And after the captivity, you look at the book of Daniel, everything after it is all prophecies about the coming of Messiah and things to come. Sorry. I missed. My slides are gone. Oh, man. Okay. Let me just jump ahead and see if maybe they got moved. I don't know. Sorry, guys. It's that PowerPoint thing. Okay. Daniel set his heart before the Lord. Now, how did the wise men find out about Jesus? It says they came from the east. Most likely, they learned 500 years earlier, Daniel had the prophecies of Jesus, about the Messiah coming. Daniel would have known the scripture because he would have been brought up in the Hebrew culture. And then it says he was placed over the house of the Magi. And so here's Daniel, 500 years earlier, placed in charge of Magi, which I think is really crazy because he's in a demonic culture and he's leaning into God and hearing from God. Now, how many of us would go, wait a minute, I'm surrounded by darkness. It would make us feel like we couldn't hear God. It would make us feel like, how do I know I'm hearing God and not what everybody else is hearing? But it's like Daniel just pressed into the Lord. Throughout his life, you see, he committed to the Lord that he would pray no matter what. There's a commitment that happened in that dark moment for Daniel. Now, this gift that Daniel did by committing to the Lord, teaching these things, paid off years later. Let me go back to the verse. Here it is. Herod called a private meeting with the wise men, and he learned from them the time of the star would appear. He said, then go to Bethlehem and search carefully for the child, and when you find him, come back and tell me so that I may worship him, because he wanted to kill him. After the interview, the wise men went their way, and the star they had seen in the east guided them to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with his mother, Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. They opened their treasures chests and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. This is a lot of money. Now, here, let's look at this paradigm over here. Here's Daniel, 500 years earlier, in captivity, horrible situation, chooses God, teaches Magi, potentially brought about Magi knowing who God was going to be. These Magi come and they provide this money. What happens next? After the wise men were gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, flee to Egypt with the child and his mother. The angel said, stay there until you return, because Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. From that point, this money would have been able to help Mary and Joseph be able to go and live in Egypt. How many times have you been in a place where it's God gives you something and then you see what it was for? The provision came long before. Grandparents invested and you reap the reward, not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually. You see it paying out. You see the generations looping over. I was talking with Ben about this. I said, I feel like it's like a rainbow. I know I like rainbows, but it is like a rainbow. A rainbow is a full circle. We only see half of it. It is a full circle. And so when we realize life is this full circle of promises of God, where there are tragic moments in our lives that potentially God is going to use in generations we have no idea about, because of our choices to serve him here, horrible moments, things that we go through, and we choose God, we choose faith, we invest in people, we do these things that God has called us to, and then years later, it comes around. We might not even be alive again. 500-year difference in investment in time that you don't get to see. But when you were faithful in the things that God's put before you, you're able to sow into the future beyond yourself. How do we live as Daniel and seek Jesus out like wise men? Okay. You set your heart on God. Submit and let him be king. Daniel's heart was submitted to the Lord. It's not just about loving God, because loving him is obviously the most important. But if we're not submitted to him, we're not living with him. And so it's loving God and submitting to what he has for us. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. It was a decision in his heart. And so when we go, okay, I'm going to set my heart and I'm going to start my love on the Lord, and I'm going to submit my life to him. I'm going to go low in humility so I can go high with God. I'm going to lay it all down so that I can walk in his steps. I'm going to let him decide my path for my life. When your heart is pointed towards God, okay, your life is fulfilling. Your relationships are fulfilling. It's not legalistic. I say, oh, I've got to do everything right to have myself submitted to the Lord. No, it's about where your heart's pointed. If your heart is pointed towards him, you're in a good place. If your heart is pointed away from him, you're in a broken place. It's really simple. It's not a box. Christianity is not a box. Faith is not a box. You can't say it's like in or out. Here's what we think Jesus, this is it. And God's like, be inside this box and then we're safe. So I stand right on the line. No, there's no line. Your heart's towards him or your heart's away from him. And so where was Daniel's heart pointed? It was towards him. Where's our hearts? We point towards him. And then as we make our path, we live our life, everything else that works out around it, because our hearts are pointed towards him. It affects our relationships with each other dynamically. Second, choose his path forward. Love, give, forgive, heal. Don't live in the past or watch from the sideline. Okay? Daniel could have chose to not forgive. He could have chose to embrace a culture that was not godly. He could have chose to be bitter. He could have chose to say, why would Yahweh, the God of Israel, do this to my life? He could have, but he didn't. He honored the Lord. He submitted to the Lord, and he would move forward. When we walk through hard times, if we don't walk in these steps, if we don't choose love, if we don't choose to give, we don't choose to forgive, we don't choose to move past the pain, we are stuck in a moment in time forever. It's not, this is a common phrase. I hear it all the time. I can forgive, but I can't forget. That's okay. Because if you can forgive, truly forgive, take a step forward day by day, the Lord will bring you farther away from it. You're not ever going to forget what you've gone through. That's like silly to think that. But it will become farther away so that you're healthy and you can look back and say, that's not going to control my life anymore. This is not going to dictate who I am anymore. I'm going to live my life free and choosing not to sit on the sidelines. What does that mean? What does it look like to sit on the sidelines? Every time I decide I'm going to serve Jesus, my life falls apart. Congratulations, you just joined the club. It is a reality. Well, every time I step into ministry, my life goes crazy. Because it works. What's your button? Everybody has a button. The breaking button. You see that with spouses? You see that with siblings? It's the best with siblings. The sibling in the car that's like, I'm not touching you. Okay? The devil's like, I'm not touching you. And it's driving you crazy because he knows how powerful you're going to become if you stick with it. If you progress in where God's called you to. If you say, I'm going to do what he says. I'm going to love that person. I'm going to serve him. I'm going to, whatever he's laying before you. If you don't allow the things that normally push you back, the devil's going to be mad. Not the devil himself. He's probably somewhere else. But there's going to be things you're going to hit resistance. And that has to be something that you can break through. If you always stop at the same place, it works. It always works. The enemy knows. Right? So we have to push past and decide, I'm not going to just stay on the safe side. I'm going to follow God. I'm going to go to a place I've never seen before. It says that they followed the star from the east. How many of us have gone on a road trip looking at one star? Going, where is this going to take us? How long is it going to take us? That's kind of like how God's plan is for our life. So we have this faint picture out there. We see it, but we don't know how long it's going to take to get there. We don't know how many mountains are in between us and where God's called us. We don't know how many valleys we're going to hit. We don't know how many times we're going to have to stop for a potty break. Elkton, Drain. Depends on who you're with. God's like, I'm patient. You got to stop. It's okay. 3, let him use you to impact generations who surround you and the ones you'll never know. You have to have a mindset. We as believers have to have a mindset beyond ourselves and right now. We have to invest. If you can see, okay, we've got generations of children that are being raised by electronics and they act out and they act like horrible little kids. And don't you just want to go away from them? You see a kid and you're just like, ugh, why are you acting like that? Here's what we are supposed to do. This. It's okay. It's okay. They are going to be disrespectful because they've been raised in a culture that does not value respect. We can't be threatened by that. We have to be okay with it. We have to say, okay, I'm the adult. I'm not going to act like that. You better respect me. How dare you talk to me like that? Allow God to use you to be the person that can bring people that are hard into the kingdom. And some of those hard ones are about this tall. And if we can get them here, we will have them here. But if we don't get them here, the likelihood is very small that they will come into the kingdom. It is statistically shown that kids that are affected by the church, when they go to church as a kid, it changes things. And so we have to sow into them. We have to go, I have to step outside myself and be willing to minister in places I'm uncomfortable. I love it when so many people have said this to me, I'm so scared of teenagers. I'm not going to say they don't bite, because sometimes they do. Actually, I've never been bit by one. I have been almost decked by one, but it's all fun and games when you're playing football games with them. You don't have to be afraid of where God's called you, no matter what the people look like. When you're shining your light, the darkness reacts. Don't allow it to stop you. Allow yourself to invest in places that God's called you to, so that you can affect the generations around you that are going to affect the generations past you. We have to have a long-term vision. I love how Ben and I have been able to be working with youth in this town for over 20 years. We have teenagers that are now in their 30s. Right? It's freaky, okay? They bring their kids to church, and I'm like, oh, you look like your parents. It's so weird. You act like your parents. That's even weirder. I'm telling you, Michaela's kids, her daughter, and maybe you guys remember Michaela when she was a youth, the littlest went to camp with us. I was in shock. It was like having Michaela in my cabin all over again. It was so delightful. I was so excited. I was like, I get to relive this moment. Okay? It's a long-term vision. I'll tell you guys my vision, okay? This is how we do ministry. I see the most important as these little tiny babies right here. And we invest in these babies what I want to see in kids' church. And then when they get to kids' church, I want to invest in them what I want to see in youth group and junior high group. And so what we teach them here, we're going to see the fruit of it in youth group. And then in youth group, I invest in what I want to see God bring in their life in their 20s and 30s. And then when they get to that point, then we're investing, how are they going to raise their children? It all started back here. Now, how are they going to invest in their children? And then next I'm going to say, how are these parents, as their kids are graduating and moving on, going to invest in grandchildren? It's a full circle of promise. It's all the way around. If we have a ministry mindset that every person you're ministering to is affecting an entire circle of generations, you have a broader view, and you're more patient in love. I love seeing generations that are far apart, like older and teenagers, come together. Guess what? They're scared of the same thing, each other. This is what I hear older people say about teenagers. They don't want to hear what I have to say. This is what I hear teenagers say. They don't want to hear what I have to say. And I'm like, yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. They do want to hear it. They do want to know. But we have to be patient to slow down enough. It has to be a time where we can have that full circle, where we invest all the way. We have to be like wise men and go, there is a vision way out there. And that's where I'm headed. No matter how many mountains, no matter how many valleys, no matter what I face, I'm going towards that place that God's called me to. Whatever it looks like, I'm going to push through and land there. Okay? Let's go ahead and pray. Lord, we thank you for the vision you've set before us. God, would you broaden our view this year? Lord, as we step into 2026, that we would have a new perspective beyond ourselves, that our vision would be bigger than us. Holy Spirit, I ask that you speak to each one of us. Lord, I ask for comfort and strength and joy in this next season. Lord, I ask for healing in families. Where there's tension, there would be relief.